The Bridgerton family has always been known for their elegance, love, and unbreakable bond. But now, a new danger looms, one that threatens not just their reputation, but the very legacy they've spent generations building. In the world of high society, love and power come at a steep price. And when these two forces clash, no one is safe. The grand ballroom of the Bridgerton estate was alive with music, laughter, and the soft murmur of polite conversation. Guests swirled across the dance floor, lost in the rhythm of the waltz, while others gathered in the corners, exchanging pleasantries and subtle glances. The air was thick with the scent of roses and the sound of crystal glasses clinking. Yet, amidst the glittering crowd, there was one individual who stood apart at the far end of the room. A figure cloaked in shadow observed the proceedings with a calculating gaze. The person's identity was unknown to most, their face hidden by a delicate mask that added to their mysterious allure. Despite the celebratory atmosphere, this stranger's eyes were cold, unfeeling, focused on one thing, and one thing only: the Bridgerton family. It had been whispered in the upper echelons of society that a new player had arrived in London, someone who had come to challenge the Bridgertons for their spot at the top of the social ladder. But who they were and what they wanted remained a mystery. The only thing anyone knew for certain was that they weren't here for small talk. They were here to make a mark hand. They would stop at nothing to succeed. The stranger's gaze briefly flickered over the faces of the Bridgerton family, Daphne, Eloise, and the others, before turning back to the swirling dance floor. In that moment, the family appeared unaware of the threat looming over them. They were too busy with their own lives, their own secrets, to notice the danger that was slowly inching toward them. Anthony Bridgerton, the eldest son, stood near the center of the ballroom, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd, always on alert. He had learned the hard way that the world of the aristocracy was not one of pure joy and indulgence. It was a world of power plays, political maneuvering, and hidden agendas. Still, he was unprepared for what was coming. Unbeknownst to him, his every move was being watched by a figure whose only goal was to tear down everything he held dear. As the music swelled, the mysterious figure began to move through the crowd, their steps slow, deliberate. Their arrival had not gone unnoticed. Subtle glances and hushed whispers followed them wherever they went. But no one dared approach, not yet. It was clear that this person was someone of significance. The atmosphere had shifted ever so slightly. What had once been a jovial celebration now felt off. There was an unease in the air, a sense of something being wrong. The stranger finally stopped at the edge of the ballroom. Watching the Bridgertons closely, their expression unreadable. They were calculating, patient. This was no rash decision, no impulsive move. Every step had been planned carefully, every word rehearsed. The Bridgertons would be taken down, but only when the time was right. And that time was coming sooner than anyone could have imagined. From across the room, Anthony's gaze met the stranger's just for a brief moment. A flicker of recognition, or was it suspicion? But before he could act, the stranger disappeared into the crowd. Their presence nothing more than a lingering shadow. The night wore on, but the sense of foreboding only grew. The Bridgerton family had no idea that their world was about to be turned upside down. They were about to be faced with a new enemy arrival who would stop at nothing to destroy them. And the battle for their love, their legacy, and their future would begin soon. The Bridgerton estate stood in peaceful silence, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. The grand ballroom had emptied hours ago. But in a secluded corner of the estate's sprawling gardens, Daphne and Simon found themselves alone, far removed from the society they had once been a part of. The night air was cool, and the sound of rustling leaves mixed with the distant hum of the London streets. Yet here in this moment, it felt as if the rest of the world had disappeared. They had come to the garden for peace, for a moment of respite from the weight of their responsibilities. But as they stood side by side, an invisible tension hung in the air. Their hands brushed lightly, but neither one made a move to close the gap. "I thought we were past all of this." Daphne's voice broke the silence, her words a quiet reflection of the turmoil inside her. Her eyes met Simon's, searching his face, looking for the man she had once known so well. The man who had once promised her that nothing would come between them. But now, the distance between them felt greater than ever. Not just physical, but emotional. Simon's gaze softened. But there was a shadow in his eyes. One that Daphne had seen before, but never with such intensity. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling with a weight that seemed to press against his ribs. "We're not as free as we once were, Daphne," he said quietly, his voice tinged with frustration. "Not in this world. Not in this life we've chosen." Her brow furrowed, and she took a step closer, her voice rising ever so slightly. "I don't understand. You're the Duke now, Simon. You've fought for your place. We've fought for our place. Why is this still something we need to hide?" Simon's eyes flickered with something unspoken. He glanced away, the weight of his thoughts pulling him back into a quiet storm. "Because it's not just about us anymore. It's about legacy, Daphne. It's about our family and the responsibilities we carry. You know that as well as I do." Daphne stood still, her heart aching with the truth of his words. She knew the pressure of legacy, the pressure of being part of the Bridgerton name. It was something that defined her, something that she had embraced with pride. But there was always a part of her that longed for freedom, for the ability to make choices without the constant tug of society's expectations. "I know," she whispered, feeling the weight of his words in her chest. "But I can't live a life where I can't be with you fully, Simon, where we are always watching our backs, hiding who we are." He turned to face her, the moonlight casting a soft glow on his features. But the distance between them still felt palpable. "You're right, but that's the reality we live in. And until we can change it, until we can break free from the chains of duty," his voice trailed off, the unsaid words hanging heavy between them. A long silence stretched between them, neither willing to move, but both knowing that something had to change. Daphne's heart wavered, torn between her love for Simon and the duty she felt to her family and society. Could she have both? Could she have the love she so desperately craved and the legacy that was her birthright? In that moment, a distant sound broke through their thoughts, the soft echo of footsteps approaching. The quiet was shattered, and both Daphne and Simon turned to look. The threat of the unknown had once again interrupted their fragile moment of peace. The footsteps belonged to none other than Anthony Bridgerton, Daphne's brother and Simon's closest confidant. His expression was serious, his usual carefree demeanor replaced with the weight of responsibility. He had been searching for them clearly. But it wasn't just a casual visit. "I need to speak with you both." Anthony's voice was firm, his brow furrowed as he approached. "There's something you need to know. Something that can't wait." Daphne and Simon exchanged a look, the unspoken question in their eyes. What now? The calm of their evening had been shattered, and the looming storm that was beginning to shape their lives had just become even more dangerous. "I'll be right there," Anthony Simon said, his tone cool but tense. He turned back to Daphne, offering her a brief, apologetic smile. "We'll talk later, I promise." But as Anthony walked away, leading the way to whatever news he had, Daphne couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping over her. Whatever had just come to their doorstep was something neither of them had prepared for. And with it, the battle for their love and their legacy was only just beginning. The Bridgerton estate, a symbol of old money and deep-rooted tradition, hummed with the quiet intensity of a family at the brink of a turning point. Inside the family dining room, the usual chatter had fallen into a rare silence, broken only by the soft clink of silverware on plates. The normally warm atmosphere, filled with teasing and laughter, was absent. Replaced by a tension that none of the Bridgertons could ignore, Anthony Bridgerton sat at the head of the table, his jaw tight, his brow furrowed as he pushed his food around his plate absent-mindedly. As the eldest son, much of the family's future rested on his shoulders, and the weight of that responsibility had never felt heavier. The news he had just received, the shadow of an enemy drawing near, had unsettled him more than he cared to admit. But even in his discomfort, he was a man of duty. His family's well-being was his first priority. "Is everything all right, Anthony?" Daphne asked, breaking the silence. Her voice, normally filled with lightness, now carried a hint of concern. She had noticed the change in her brother since their brief conversation in the garden with Simon. Something was weighing heavily on him, and she needed to know what it was. Anthony met her gaze, his eyes betraying the internal battle he was waging. He had never been one to share his burdens freely, always the protector, always the one to keep the family together. But in this moment, he felt as though his role was about to be challenged in ways he couldn't anticipate. There's a lot we need to consider. Anthony looked around the table at his family, all of them listening intently, their faces reflecting the same shock and fear. He hesitated for a moment, the weight of what he was about to say heavy on his chest. It's a rival family. Someone with the means and the desire to disrupt everything we've worked for. They want control, influence, and they'll use whatever means necessary to get it. A hush fell over the room. Eloise, who had been playing with her fork, immediately stopped, her usual carefree demeanor replaced by a rare seriousness. "Is there no way to stop them?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "We've been through worse before. What's different now?" Anthony's gaze hardened as he met her eyes. This time, it's personal. They're not just going after our titles or wealth, they're going after our legacy. They want to destroy everything we've built, piece by piece. The room grew colder with his words, the realization settling over them all. The Bridgertons had always prided themselves on their family bonds, their unwavering loyalty to each other. But now, they faced an enemy who threatened to tear that apart. "I won't let them do that," Daphne said, her voice filled with resolve. She had always been the peacemaker of the family, the one who sought harmony and understanding. But this was different. This wasn't just about society's expectations or gossip. It was about their very survival as a family. She stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor as she moved to stand beside Anthony. "We'll fight back. We always do." Anthony looked at her, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips, though the worry in his eyes remained. "I know we will. But the battle won't be easy. We need to be prepared for what's to come." Their mother, Violet Bridgerton, who had been silent until now, placed her hand gently on Daphne's arm. Her eyes, wise and knowing, softened as she spoke. "We've faced our share of trials, my dear, but there's one thing the Bridgertons know above all else. We stand together. No matter what happens, we are a family, and we will face this storm as one." The room fell silent once more, each Bridgerton lost in their own thoughts. There was a deep understanding in their eyes, a shared knowledge that this was only the beginning of something much larger than any of them had anticipated. The challenges ahead would test their strength, their loyalty, and their love for one another. But no matter what, they knew one thing for certain: they would not go down without a fight. The dinner continued in an uneasy silence, the weight of the conversation lingering in the air long after the plates were cleared. The Bridgertons had always been a family of resilience, but now they were about to face a battle unlike any they had ever known. And as they sat together, they couldn't help but wonder how much of their legacy, how much of their love would survive the coming storm. The following days passed in a blur of meetings, hushed conversations, and subtle exchanges of power. While the Bridgertons tried to maintain the appearance of normalcy, the weight of the threat pressing down on them only grew heavier. The family rallied together, discussing strategies and possibilities, but there was an air of uncertainty that none could shake. The enemy was out there somewhere, waiting for the right moment to strike. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the estate was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, Anthony found himself alone in his study. The thick mahogany desk, scattered with papers and correspondence, felt like a prison. Despite the quiet of the room, his mind raced, constantly pulling him between the demands of his family and the specter of the rival family that now threatened everything he had worked for. The sound of a soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts, and without looking up, he called out, "Come in!" The door creaked open, and in stepped a figure Anthony did not expect to see. It was Benedict Bridgerton, his younger brother, and to Anthony's surprise, he wasn't alone. A man stood at his side tall, with sharp features and an air of quiet confidence. Benedict's usual carefree demeanor was absent. replaced by a serious expression that matched Anthony's own. Anthony Benedict began, his voice low. "I think you should meet Mr. Rutherford." Anthony raised an eyebrow and leaned back in his chair, studying the stranger with a calculating gaze. He had heard the name before: Rutherford, a wealthy landowner with questionable connections, known for making a fortune off both legitimate business and less than legal dealings. "Mr. Rutherford," Anthony said, his tone neutral. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" The man, Rutherford, stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I believe we have a mutual interest. Lord Bridgerton," he said smoothly, his voice almost too polite. "A threat, if you will, that has come to both our doors." Anthony's brow furrowed, and he exchanged a brief glance with Benedict. "You think we have common ground?" he asked, his voice sharp. "You've been known to make deals with some of the city's most dangerous players. Why should I trust you?" Rutherford's smile didn't falter. "Trust is a rare commodity in our world, Lord Bridgerton, but what I'm offering is simple. An alliance. A way for us to strike back at the family threatening both our legacies." Anthony stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor as he moved to the window. His eyes narrowed, watching the rolling hills outside the estate. The idea of an alliance with Rutherford, of all people, felt like a dangerous gamble. But there was no denying that Rutherford's influence, resources could tip the scales in their favor. "What exactly do you propose?" Anthony asked, his voice low, calculating. He could already feel the weight of the decision, bearing down on him. Rutherford's eyes glinted with something almost predatory, though he maintained his composed exterior. "We pool our resources, Lord Bridgerton. We work together to gather the information we need about the rival family, every secret, every weakness. We make sure they know we are not to be trifled with." Anthony remained silent for a long moment, the silence between them thick and heavy. He wasn't naive. He knew that alliances in this world were never as simple as they appeared. But with the family in danger, could he afford to be picky? The Bridgertons had always been self-reliant. But this new enemy was unlike anything they had faced before. "You're offering power, I take it," Anthony finally said, turning to face Rutherford. "But at what cost?" Rutherford's smile widened, ever so slightly. "Everything comes with a price, Lord Bridgerton. You of all people should know that. What I'm offering is protection for you, your family, and your legacy. In return, you give me access. You allow me to expand my influence in your circles. Nothing too dramatic, of course. Just a little more leverage." Anthony's gut twisted at the thought. The idea of allowing someone like Rutherford to have any kind of sway over the Bridgerton family was distasteful. Yet, as much as he hated to admit it, there was a part of him that saw the value in the proposition. He couldn't deny that they were running out of options. "We would be in your debt," Benedict added quietly, his gaze flickering nervously between Anthony and Rutherford. "But I think it's worth considering." Anthony exhaled slowly, his thoughts whirling. The idea of using Rutherford's resources seemed practical, but it felt like a dangerous road to walk. How far could they go before they lost control of the situation? "I'll think about it," Anthony said, his voice firm. "But know this, Rutherford. If you cross us, if you make even the slightest move to harm my family, I will destroy you. Understand?" Rutherford's smile never wavered, his eyes cold and calculating. "Of course, Lord Bridgerton. We have an agreement then." With that, the meeting ended. But as Rutherford left the room, Anthony couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a deal with the devil. And in doing so, he had taken the first step into a world where every choice could lead to their undoing. The battle for love and legacy was no longer just a matter of family, it had become a game of power. And the stakes had never been higher. The following weeks felt like a pressure cooker. The Bridgerton family now aware that they were being watched, their every move scrutinized by both friend and foe. The heavy weight of the situation bore down on them in ways they had never imagined. The grand estate, once a symbol of their stability and comfort, now felt like a battlefield. One cold morning, just as the sun began to rise, a messenger arrived at the Bridgerton estate with news that would alter the course of the family's fate. Anthony was the first to receive the letter. his name scrawled across the thick parchment in sharp, elegant handwriting. He broke the seal and quickly skimmed the contents, his brow furrowing as he read. The message was short but unmistakable. The rival family has made their move. The legacy they seek to claim begins with you. Watch your back, Lord Bridgerton. You will not see it coming. Anthony's heart sank. The message was a threat, veiled in the language of diplomacy, but unmistakable in its intent. The rival family had struck, not with swords or daggers, but with their cunning planning something that would dismantle everything Anthony held dear. The battle was no longer theoretical. It was real, and it had begun. Without wasting a moment, Anthony gathered his closest family members in the drawing room. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting long shadows across the faces of the Bridgertons as they assembled, each person sensing the gravity of what was to come. "What does it say?" Daphne asked, her voice a mix of fear and determination as Anthony handed her the letter. Daphne stood up, her usual calm demeanor now replaced with fierce resolve. "We won't let them tear us apart, Anthony. We have our family, and we have our name. We'll fight back." "Fight back?" Eloise scoffed, standing next to her sister. "What can we possibly do? We're not soldiers." She turned to Anthony, the unease in her voice undeniable. "We need a plan. Something more than just wishing them away." Anthony paused, his eyes scanning the faces of his family. They were right, this wasn't going to be a battle of fists or blades. It was a battle for their reputation, their legacy, and perhaps even their lives. His mind raced as he formulated a plan, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. Every move had to be calculated, and the family couldn't afford any missteps. "We start with the information we have," Anthony said, his voice firm with purpose. "We'll gather everything we know about the rival family, their weaknesses, their connections. We'll make sure they know we're not backing down. Are we really doing this?" Benedict's voice broke the tension in the room. He stood near the door, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Are we going to get involved with them? With Rutherford? What's the price of all this?" Anthony's gaze hardened. "We don't have a choice, Benedict. They've made it clear that they're going to take everything from us. If we don't act now, we could lose everything. Our legacy, our family, everything we've built will be shattered." The room fell silent. Each Bridgerton processed Anthony's words in their own way, but one thing was certain: they were all in this together. They were no longer just a family of luxury and social events. They were a family at war, and their enemy was out for blood. As they gathered around, the plan took shape. Anthony, with Benedict and Eloise by his side, would lead the charge. Daphne would use her position to gather allies in society, people who had once respected the Bridgerton name. Even Simon, despite the growing tensions between him and Daphne, would be drawn into the fold. The network of alliances they would form now became a matter of survival. The battle lines were drawn. The Bridgertons had no choice but to confront the rival family head-on, no matter what it would cost them. But just as they began to form their strategy, a knock on the door interrupted the discussion. The servant entered with a message that immediately shifted the mood in the room. "Lord Bridgerton," the servant said, her voice trembling slightly. "There is someone here to see you. They say they have urgent news about the rival family." The Bridgertons exchanged uneasy glances. Was this news from an ally, or yet another complication? Whatever it was, they knew that the enemy was one step ahead, and they had to be ready to face whatever came next. As Anthony stood to greet the visitor, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to step into the most dangerous chapter of their lives. And no matter how prepared they were, they would never be ready for the full extent of the battle that lay ahead. The clash had begun, and it would be a fight for everything they held dear. The Bridgerton estate, once a place of warmth and familial joy, had become a fortress. Every room seemed charged with an undercurrent of tension, as if the walls themselves were aware that time was running out. The rivalry with the rival family had escalated in ways no one could have predicted, and the stakes had never been higher. Now, more than ever, the Bridgertons needed to face the truth of their situation. It was just after dusk when Anthony stood at the front gates. his eyes scanning the horizon as he waited for the meeting he had arranged with their Elira Thurford. What was once a desperate alliance had now become a lifeline. As distasteful as it was, Rutherford's power and influence were their only chance of survival. He had promised to deliver vital information about the rival family's next move. But Anthony knew better than to trust a man like Rutherford completely. Every deal had its price, and the true cost had yet to be revealed. As the heavy iron gates creaked open, Anthony's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of the mysterious figure he had come to rely on, Rutherford. The man's cold smile never seemed to reach his eyes as he approached, flanked by two of his own men. Behind him, the tension of the evening seemed to intensify, and Anthony could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "You're late," Anthony said, his voice sharp with frustration. Rutherford offered no apology. Instead, he extended a leather-bound folder toward Anthony, the contents undoubtedly filled with secrets that could tip the balance of the impending battle. "I trust this will be enough," Rutherford said, his tone as casual as ever, though his eyes remained calculating, without wasting a second. Anthony took the folder from him, feeling the weight of its contents like a lead weight in his hand. It was the information he had been waiting for, details about the rival family's movements, their plans, their alliances. It was the key to striking back, but it was also dangerous. With knowledge came power, and in the world they lived in, power was a double-edged sword. Anthony quickly skimmed through the papers, his mind racing with each new detail that came to light. The rival family wasn't just after their wealth, status; they were targeting their most vulnerable point, the reputation of the Bridgerton name. They had already begun sowing rumors, using scandal to chip away at the family's credibility in society. But that wasn't all. There was something more sinister at play: a secret alliance with one of their own, someone from within the Bridgerton circle. Someone who had betrayed them for the promise of wealth and power. Anthony's stomach twisted with disbelief as he read the name that jumped off the page. It was someone he had trusted, someone who had been in the inner circle for years. Betrayal came in many forms, but this was the deepest cut. "Is this true?" Anthony asked, his voice low and dangerous. He looked up at Rutherford, his eyes narrowing. Rutherford didn't flinch. "You'll find out soon enough. The question is, what will you do with this information? Will you act quickly enough, or will you be too late?" The challenge was clear. Rutherford wasn't just offering a way out. He was testing Anthony's resolve, pushing him into a corner where there was no turning back. With the folder in hand, Anthony returned to the estate, his mind reeling. He had to confront the traitor, and he had to do it now. The rival family had crossed the line, and this was no longer just about protecting their legacy. It was about survival. The family's very foundation was at risk, and the only way to stop it was to strike first. Inside the drawing room, the family had gathered, awaiting his return. They knew something had shifted, and the air could feel the change in the very atmosphere of the house. As Anthony entered, he held the folder in his hands, his face grim. The Bridgertons fell silent, waiting for him to speak. "I know who's behind it," Anthony said, his voice steady but tinged with anger. "It's someone close to us. Someone we've trusted." Daphne, who had been sitting quietly by the fire, looked up in shock. "Who?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I can't say yet, but I will," Anthony replied, his jaw clenched with determination. "We've been betrayed, and now we need to act." "What's our next move?" Benedict asked, his voice filled with a mix of disbelief and urgency. "How do we stop them?" Anthony's eyes flickered over the room, meeting each of his family members in turn. "We use this information. We expose the traitor, and we go to war. No more waiting. No more hiding. We fight back together." The family nodded in unison, the gravity of Anthony's words sinking in. This wasn't just a family feud. It wasn't just about legacy anymore. It was about loyalty, trust, and the fight for everything they had ever stood for. As the night wore on, the Bridgertons made their plans. They knew that the final hour was approaching, and there would be no room for mistakes. This would be a battle fought with wit, strategy, and the strength of their family bond. The cost would be high, and the consequences unknown. But one thing was clear: They would not go down without a fight, as they moved to prepare for the clash that would determine their future. The doors of the estate closed for the night, sealing in the tension and anticipation. The reckoning had come, and with it, the final battle for love and legacy was about to begin. The grand Bridgerton estate stood silent under the moonlight, the once peaceful grounds now feeling like a battleground. The preparations were complete. Every strategy had been laid out, every ally contacted, and the final pieces were in place. The family had taken their first step into a war that would not only test their strength, but their very unity. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, Bridgertons couldn't help but feel the weight of what lay ahead. Inside, the family gathered one final time, their faces a mixture of resolve and uncertainty. The air was thick with anticipation, every word and movement laced with the knowledge that this was no longer just about protecting their legacy, it was about survival. Anthony, standing at the center of the room, looked at his family. Each person wearing the quiet strength that had always defined the Bridgerton name, but now there was something more. The stakes had changed. No longer were they simply protecting their reputation in high society. Now it was personal. Every choice they made in the coming days would determine the fate of their future, their name, and everything they held dear. Daphne's gaze met his across the room, her eyes filled with determination. "We will get through this, Anthony. Together," she said, her voice unwavering. The fear that had once clouded her every decision had been replaced by an unshakable resolve. Anthony gave her a small, appreciative nod, though his thoughts were elsewhere. There was a storm coming, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they had already been caught in its path. Yet, even with the uncertainty that loomed over them, he knew one thing. They would fight back with everything they had. They would never let their family be torn apart, no matter the cost. Suddenly, a knock at the door interrupted the silence. It was the messenger again this time, with a new letter. Anthony's eyes narrowed as he took the letter, tearing it open with haste. The words on the page were simple, but their meaning was unmistakable. The rival family is ready to make their move. You will face us soon, and when you do, it will be the end of your line. Anthony's heart pounded in his chest. The warning was clear. There would be no negotiation, no room for compromise. The time for games was over. "I think it's time," Anthony said, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of what was to come. He turned to his family, his eyes meeting theirs with a fierce determination. "We do what we must, and we fight with everything we have." The Bridgertons nodded, their resolve matching his. The time for hesitation had passed. There would be no more waiting, no more second-guessing. It was time to face their enemies, and they would do so together, united as a family. As Anthony walked toward the door, he paused and looked back at his family. They were ready, prepared for what would be the most challenging battle of their lives. The world of high society, with all its intricate games and carefully built facades, was about to be shattered. And when it was, only one thing would remain: the Bridgerton legacy. The final scene began to unfold, the tension in the air nearly palpable. What would happen when the battle for love and legacy reached its peak? Would the Bridgertons emerge victorious, or would the rival family claim their prize? To be continued, ... This concludes the script for Bridgerton Season 4. The battle for love and legacy begins. The stage is set for a thrilling clash that will test the strength of the Bridgerton family. The outcome is uncertain, but the fight for their future is just beginning.